Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Friday, May 10th. Derek Van Riper, Saris, Trevor May here with you. It's a live one if you're joining us. Thanks for being part of the Live Hive today. On this episode, we dig into a bunch of different topics, ranging from pitcher role changes, what is working so far this season, pitchers moving in both directions, some becoming starters for the first time in a long time, some guys moving to the pen for the first time, having a lot of success, and we'll talk about some guys that could be making role changes in the future that should pay off if those rule changes come to fruition. We're going to talk about the injuries suffered by Willson Contreras earlier this week as part of a growing problem around the game. Catcher's interference happening quite a bit more than we've ever seen before. So we'll try and dig a bit into that. And we're going to try and solve a very complex puzzle. How to hit Jared Jones, the task in front of the Cubs on Friday night. What do you do against a guy that's got everything working the way Jared Jones does right now? Trevor, how you guys doing today?
I'm doing good.
I'm just glad it's Friday. It's time. It's time for another weekend. I need it badly. If you haven't jumped in the Discord, by the way, you can do that from the show description. I want to start today in a little bit of a different way. We saw MLB Network's Greg Amsinger wake up the baseball gods earlier this week in a way that you don't often see. And we're just going to run this clip for a minute because it is fantastic.
Don't take this the wrong way, but we are already a no-hitter alert. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, before he throws a single pitch tonight against the Marlins, we have a no-hitter alert.
Okay.
Enjoy what could be a no-hitter from Yamamoto.
Jazz swinging first pitch.
Right here on MLB Network for Harold, CY, I'm Greg. We have a no-hitter alert. Enjoy this game live on MLB Network.
Boy, you're crazy.
It's in the major leagues to establish himself as that guy. Dodgers looking for a 6th straight win and a 13th out of their last 15 after they took the first game 6-3 last night. Yamamoto comes home and off we go, and the aggressive Marlins get a first pitch swing and a high fly ball and a home run for Jazz Chisholm on the first pitch.
I just love it. I love the extreme jinx because it's the one thing you're never supposed to talk about. We heard it in the studio. Jazz is swinging first pitch because that's what Jazz does. And Jazz goes yard on the first swing of the game, which is just a ridiculous sequence of events. And I saw people around the baseball Twitter sphere, Reddit, saying this was the greatest no-hitter jinx of all time. There have been a few, more than a few. And at first, Greg Amsinger deserved solo credit, but then, fessed up to it. There are receipts. MLB Network tweeted this because Yamamoto had a 15-inning scoreless streak going into that start. They said, predict his stat line, and our hero right there says, no hitter.
I really hope that they didn't see that. It had nothing to do with any of that.
What is that Twitter account? The moments preceding an unfortunate
or the freezing cold takes.
Yeah, freezing cold takes. Yeah. That's
I should have responded.
That always happens.
One hitter after that happened.
Yeah, there's like a score. Yeah, you should definitely just went one hitter right after it happened. That would have been really funny. But it's always like, guy's got a scoreless streak. He's going against a team that it just isn't very good and cannot hit. And everyone's like, this is a no hitter, easy. And then first pitch, or first hitter, it ends. And you're like, oh, well, okay, throw that out the window. It sucks as a starter. I can tell you that much, giving up a first pitch homer. Because you're like, how many people? Man, I hope today's scoreless. And then you're like, well.
I mean, he settled down and had a great start. But
of course he did, yeah.
How many times have people thought, going against the A's, no hitter alert, and you still got Shea. You still got.
Yeah. Someone's going to take you deep.
Yeah, I think Harold was the funniest though. Just
Harold's reaction was perfect. He's just chuckling the whole time, and they knew there was absolutely no way it was going to happen as soon as it was brought up, and they ran the graphic over. No chance. I think this is one of those things that even we know a lot of ball players are superstitious. We've talked about that on the show at least once before. Even the guys that aren't that superstitious probably still abide by the don't talk about a no-hitter rule. Like that's still like, don't do that. Just do not do that. I don't even like unwritten rules. Don't talk about no-hitters.
I know a guy who does it. who pokes the bear, and then he gives a disclaimer every time he says Trevor Williams. He'll be like, "Guys, he's still got a no-hitter going," and we're like, "Dude," and he's like, "Nothing I say matters. Nothing I say is going to affect this at all. That's stupid. And if you don't believe it, then it's not real." And we're like, and it always continues for a bit. So it never happens immediately. So I'm like, maybe you have to say that second part in order to say, I'm aware. I'm not. It's not my hubris. I am surrendering. And then they go, okay, then we'll allow it to continue.
Oh, it's just golden moment, though, earlier this week. Let's move on to some other topics, though. Willson Contreras suffered a fractured forearm, got hit by the swing of JD Martinez earlier this week. And as I was reading about this, I was starting to realize this is a much bigger problem around the game where catchers keep changing their positioning, trying to steal low strikes. At first, I just saw a tweet from John Denton, who covers the Cardinals for MLB.com, and he pointed out the Cardinals were instructing Contreras to do that. And I saw the reactions to it, and they were kind of similar to mine. I didn't tweet anything back. I just saw people saying, well, that's dumb. Why are the Cardinals doing that? The whole league is doing that. MLB sent out a memo to all the teams back in the spring that they need to basically stop doing that or be less aggressive about doing that. So even though we didn't see anything catastrophic happen until this Willson Contreras injury, you started digging into the numbers a little bit. This is actually an increasing problem around the game.
Yeah, I mean, from 2000 till 2010, we were looking at, you see at the bottom there, about 0.007 catcher's interferences per game. In 2024, we're at 0.061, so like almost 10 times. I mean, it's still not a ton per game, but once you start getting to one every 10 games, that'll be blowing out what has been done in the past and well beyond 10 times what we did just 15 years ago. So this is a really big problem. As you can see, it's kind of a meteoric rise where it was kind of coming up during Hawkeye and the rise of Hawkeye, and so maybe they were saying, oh, look at these strikes that we can steal. But it's even worse this year. It's almost like they looked at the memo and said, oh, well, that sounds like a good idea.
So teams that weren't doing it aggressively started to do it more because they realized they may have been missing out on an opportunity.
Right. Oh, we shouldn't be doing something? Wait a second. I mean, in 2022, through this point of the season, 2022, we had half as many catcher interferences as we do now.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a hockey stick situation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. I was looking up. I was just doing some research on this, and like, okay, like what else happened around these times? It looks, if you look at that, it's 2019 is when I feel like the biggest spike happened, and that's when I feel like the knee down thing was.
It's related to really one popular. Knee down. Yeah,
but I don't think the knee down is actually causing it. I just think it's the both things are part of like how can we make catchers better, and they
low strikes.
Yes, a league-wide commitment to it. They're just going to correlate without being necessarily attached to each other, I feel like. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But it's funny. I'm researching, and I've got my iPad here, and I got the Mariners game on. And as I'm typing in like something into Google to try to follow a thread, Ryan Jeffers gets a catcher's interference call. Like I'm like, well, this is definitely a thing. We should, and the Twins are a team that they had Tanner. God, what's his last?
Yes,
he's a Washington guy too. I know him well.
And he's at the Yankees now.
And he's at the Yankees now, and he's was one of the leaders of this movement. And I mean, we've seen how the Yankees catchers too have gotten really, really good at it over the years. So it's like. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense that getting strikes, but again, this is just a symptom, I think. Yeah, Tanner Swanson. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and check this out. Related number. I was looking at called strikes in the bottom of the zone. And what I did was I looked at the attack zones, so kind of that's in and out of the zone across the bottom. And I just wanted to look at called strikes there. When I looked at all pitches. 2024 had the highest percentage. But when I looked at breaking pitches in the bottom of that zone, in sort of in that gray area around the bottom of the zone, it really popped. So if you look at breaking pitches in 2015, 7.2% of breaking pitches in that band of the zone were called strikes. And this is on takes. So 7.2% of them were called strikes. In 2024, that's 12.3%. So, you're getting close to doubling the amount of called strikes you're getting there. And that's the difference, between, getting 7,000 called strikes down there versus 4,000 called strikes. I mean, you're talking thousands of called strikes. That's why people do the one knee down, despite I'm not really willing to give that it's really that much worse for blocking. I have Tanner in my ear. I have Jerry from the Rockies. Who's it? Jerry Weinstein in my ear. They have studied this. They've looked at it. They are big proponents of one knee down. You also see across baseball more people doing one knee down, but that's why you see one knee down. That's why you also see them getting closer to the plate, is to get that breaking ball. And people talk about like stealing strikes and make it sound like it's nefarious. What you're trying to do is just get that ball before it moves more and makes it look like less of a strike. You think especially of sort of a 12-6 curveball coming down through the back of that zone. If you can just catch that a little bit closer to the zone, it doesn't look like it hit the dirt. If you catch it in the dirt, even if it did go through the zone, the umpire is a little bit less likely to give you that call. So, you get on the one knee down, so you're closer to get that call. We've seen that the called strikes have gone up because of one knee down, but I think this is part of the story too.
And we also hate, I feel like the public discourse anyways, we hate umpires more than we've ever hated them ever right now. And there's all these pitches are being missed. Catchers are getting really good and making it look like a strike. Like you just said, 12-6 curveball. There's a human eyes. If it's going straight down, there's no person on the planet could be able to tell how high it was when it's not there. It's a guess for in all intents and purposes. You're going off feeling because you're not seeing
right. And umpires are actually getting better because they're doing actually something similar like what pitchers do. When you train in front of a TrackMan, you're trying to put together what the feel with the numbers, right? And so that's what the umpires are doing is like they're adjusting where they called strikes because they look after the game and go, oh, all right, this is how I'm being evaluated. And so that curveball, even though it looked like a ball to me, I now know where it actually is a strike because I can check the machines later. I can check that machines are grading me. So,
he can also like look up at the board, see movement profiles because a lot of times they know that like that moved probably farther than I think it did.
Yeah, that's
there are guys that catch glances every once in a while, like that was gross. What was that? Sometimes I'm sure there are guys that are just interested.
Yeah, right. I mean, they like baseball. I mean, we hate them, but they like baseball.
They do. They would not do that if they didn't.
Trust me. You have to love baseball to do that job.
There's no way.
It's a grinding job. It's a thankless job to being hated by 30, 40,000 people around you at a time, plus everybody watching at home.
Of which,
that
like,
fun?
If there's 40,000 people there, like 39,500 have no idea if that was a strike or not. Have no possible way of seeing it.
Is there anything to be regulated here, or is it just one of these things that polices itself because the clear hazard was on full display earlier this week? Like we can't get that close because that might happen. Like, does this sort of stop catchers from getting any closer and pushing harder to steal more strikes? Like, have we plateaued? Have we hit the limit?
Mm-hmm. I think the incentive is still much higher to grab the strikes and the chance of that happening because like JD Martinez too, he lets get deep. Like he's got a swing that the bat stays back there a long time, like more than most guys.
Pretty far back in the box.
Yeah,
and
he stands way back there. Yeah,
you could try to enforce the back of the batter's box a little bit.
That would
better.
be what I would say would happen first. Yeah,
maybe I hesitate to offer new rules and new painted lines on the field because I know that there's a portion of the population that'll just hate it, but I don't know why there isn't a catcher box. I mean, you have batter box. Why not have a catcher box? I wonder then if we'll find like guys with long arms. Because you make them sit there and the guys with longer arms can reach out further. Like we'll have we need a tall catcher who's on one knee. He can really get his long arm out there and
get a 7'2" wingspan. Yeah.
Well, maybe you could have a catcher's box where they can't put their arm out of it. I don't know. I mean,
I think the batter's box is the best. Like, stop erasing it
Yeah.
Like they can be like, hey, move up. Hey, move up. Umpires can like look and see. Like, so I think that'd be the first thing. That'd probably cut down a lot. At least guys getting hit in the elbow.
Do you think the crew could get out there and redraw the batter's box like in the third inning or something?
Or at least put the back line on. 100%.
Yeah.
They could redo the
Three
back line
seconds.
between
You
every
guys are
half inning.
quick.
How long would that take? 30
Like
seconds?
pit crews. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pros, so they can get
They
that
would get,
done.
what they would do is they get one of those little boxes and run out and just box it and knock it a couple times and drop it and then run out. Like they would just like place it.
Yeah. I mean, I hate that again. We're making more work for people who, don't get paid too much, but still, like, something about enforcing the current rules could be in there. And then, I mean, a catcher's box should be something they consider, I think.
Yeah, but if you don't want to add extra boxes, just enforcing the existing box would be a really good place to start. While we're at it, even though Eno's not feeling particularly litigious right now, do we need to cool it with the jumbo sliding mitts? Like, is there going to be a point where those are absurd? Like, I grabbed a snapshot of some different ones, and we have what Bobby Witt Jr. wears, which I would think of as more of like the old NES Power Glove. It looks like a normal batting glove.
His fingers are coming out of the end of that, huh?
It's got a lot of cushion and stuff in it, but it's not like the full-on mitts that you see from Ketel Marte and Ronald Acuna Jr.
Acuna's looks like it goes past his fingers like 2 or 3 inches.
Go way past his fingers.
Yeah, so like the two on the left, like the left and center, like Witt and Marte, you're like, okay, those are fine. Those are two different styles. Wear what you're comfortable with. Like you can look at Ketel Marte's other hand; it's balled up into a fist, and you can see that the hands are still about the same size.
Yeah,
that's totally fine. Acuna, wearing one of those Nike sliding mitts, has one that covers the entire back of his batting helmet. So I don't know. I remember as a hockey fan growing up in the 90s, like pads kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when you have new equipment, eventually you have to regulate it. So is this an area where the league
did they regulate it for hockey goalies?
They finally, at some point back in the 90s, had to make some changes because it was insane. Like
that would be hilarious as a hockey goalie just come out there and just like
they were walls. They really were. Like everything went flush when they went close together. Like literally a flush. All the pads were like flush together. You're like a transformer.
Yeah, that is exactly what it looked like.
A couple years, and then they cracked down on it, but it was crazy for a couple years for sure.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna have some kind of
small crackdown on elbow guards a little bit too, right? Like Barry's elbow guard was huge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the current elbow guards have to be smaller, and they're not as big as they used to be. You just got almost like body armor when you got.
He had a shin guard on his elbow. Like he was like, "I dare you to come in here. I'm like, I don't want to throw any pitches to you, man. Like you don't need to. Trust me. I'm not. I'm trying to get as far away from you as possible."
Did you ever face him?
No, overlap.
Shoot.
No overlap.
Yeah, but I it'll just take someone to take it even further. I mean, like just have someone who's like, when they put their hands down, like their slide that goes past their knees, like have a 2-foot running out there with 2-foot swords.
Yeah.
I think we've added enough stolen bases with the new rules where I think it's time to go ahead and cut that off somewhere and say, okay, we did what we wanted to do. We increased action in that facet of the game. Now we've hit our limit as far as what these mitts should actually look like.
There's probably a dusty old rule attached to like equipment you wear on your hands or batting gloves or something that we just haven't had to enforce in forever. And then,
this comes up like you saw the Pete Crow Armstrong thing where he's sliding. He takes his helmet off, and he's safe because he's got his helmet on the base.
I kind of like that.
And it turns out, in the time they called him safe, but it turns out if you look at the rule, it says that like the piece of equipment that's making you safe, like the piece of your equipment only counts as part of your body if it's on the right place.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't like take your shoe off and
with his glove on or with his helmet on, but he can't do it within his hand.
So I could believe you that there's some part of the rule book they can just circle and be like, see, because of this,
I mean, they seem confused when they call them safe. They're like,
I don't know.
Okay? And everyone's like,
this is an arcane part of the book. We're talking Old Testament here. No, but also, when we modeled stolen bases, so we know that stolen bases went up with all the rule changes about 30% year over year. So, we can say with some certainty that stolen, like the rule changes gave you 30% more. Well, I would say the throw overs is probably 25 of those 30%. Like, I think the throw over rule really was the source of a lot of it, because once you throw over once or twice, then you don't want to ever throw over again. And if you've got 2 throwovers as the hitter, you're like, I'm going, like they're not going to throw it again. So I think the throwovers was probably the biggest part of that. But we know that the bases being a little bit bigger was some non-zero part of that 30% increase. Let's say it's 5%. Let's say it's 6%. Now, as a base stealer, if you can, that means that an inch could be changed your outcome 5%. So if you're making a glove, you're like, well, I'd really like to be 30. I'd like to be 30%, say 30% more often. Like 3 inches sounds good.
Add an inch, see what happens. Oh, I didn't know. Yeah. Why not?
I think that, not for nothing, I think the NFL could have its own sticky stuff crisis at some point, because they have gloves made by Nike that are super, super sticky.
They're like fly paper. Yeah.
And the only reason,
Have you tried to throw a baseball in one, just messing around?
No, but that's a great YouTube video idea.
Yeah, sticky stuff versus NFL sticky gloves. I think the reason that it hasn't become a crisis in the NFL is that's mostly a pro offense thing. If you think about it, it allows a receiver to do these crazy one-handed grabs we're seeing, which usually means, Sports Center highlight play. Whereas the sticky stuff in baseball was anti-offense.
Yeah, no one cared about the cool, nasty pitch. It's like cool so many times. It really is. I get it. It's pretty repetitive.
We saw during the sticky stuff era the nastiest breaking balls we'll ever see in baseball.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. In my piece with Sonny Gray, I don't know if you saw this, Trevor, but I did this interview with Sonny Gray, and he admits to using sticky stuff in the interview. Yeah. And in such a banal, oh, well, I threw this great sweeper with sticky stuff, and then after sticky stuff, it really slowed down. I couldn't throw it as hard, and it was popping around my thumb, and I couldn't get the same kind of action without the sticky stuff. So I had to change my grip and change my attitude. And I don't know how many people noticed that, but I was like, well, okay, that's just like a bygone era that we can talk about now.
It is way more common than people think. And it was rare. It was rare that you had a guy who was against it. Seth Lugo is a guy who's against. He was like, you don't. No one needs that. I don't need that stuff. I'm like,
well, because he can spin it so well.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the spin machine, dude.
Spin rate in the league. Shut up. Right? I'm glad you don't. I'm glad you feel this way, but shut up.
Well, with Walker Buehler coming back, we can see a really big difference in the vertical movement on his fastball from before.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Oof.
Oh, that's a good extreme one too.
The way he spin just on every pitch, gone.
Yeah,
just gone. And I've always noticed with Karinchak, the way he would get ready between pitches, he had to keep tossing the ball to keep it from getting too
to make sure it's the right amount of sticky.
Yeah, he looked like he was battering
the right amount of stick.
That's exactly why that's where that came from. That's what you do. You snap your fingers, and he kept snapping the ball up and snapping his fingers.
Yeah.
To see, oh, there it is, and then he'd be ready to go. And then he'd have rosin in his hair, which was legal, right? But rosin in his hair, and he'd go to that all the time. He'd go to his hair over, and he had long hair all of a sudden because he needed some tack, which I understand as well. But then pitch clock made it so he didn't have time
to do all that.
Where is he now?
Oh, man.
So I honestly, there's a part of me that feels for it, because I'm like, he has to make massive adjustments. And when you taste being that good, and then you're like, now I can't. I mean, it is his fault at the end of the day, but I would still there'd be a level of frustration. I had it. I had it figured out, and now I have to figure it out again for the third time. It sucks.
Yeah. The way that Sonny figured out, the way that he figured out of it was I can't get the plus horizontal movement and the plus velo. So I'm just going to focus on the velo. Just going to throw my sweeper harder.
Yeah.
And he moved his thumb out of the way. His thumb was in the way, and it was kind of popping around his thumb. Mm-hmm. So then he kind of put the thumb on the side of the ball, and their sweepers are crazy. They throw them.
Yeah.
They throw them with a Tanaka's sweeper. It's like this.
Oh, the Brad Hand split finger sweepy thing.
Yeah,
That's how he
it
throws
almost
his.
looks like a split, and they don't have any seams.
Yeah.
And
So it probably just slides.
yeah, it
And
just
they just
slides
can stay
this
behind it.
way. And then his finger, he had to change where his thumb was. His thumb was down here. I guess it was popping.
Oh, get it out of
So
the
he
way.
put it on his side. And so now when he throws it, it goes that way. Yeah. But
Interesting.
Tanaka, apparently one of the OG sweepers. That's a lot of people have learned Tanaka's grip. That's the Yankee sweeper, basically.
Well, we got a big topic lined up for today. We had a few nice ones already, but we want to talk about moving between the rotation and the bullpen. And I think that's becoming a little bit more of a two-way street than it has been. Like traditionally, right? If you don't make it as a starter or get to a point in your career where you can't start effectively anymore, you become a reliever, have that second life, and that's the whole story. We've had a handful of guys this year make the move back so far to pretty high levels of success, right? Jordan Hicks and Ronaldo Lopez, two examples of guys that are making it work as starters. Both were starters before. Hicks more in the minors with the Cardinals. Lopez during his time with the White Sox before a shift to a short relief role. I want to start with Hicks just for the broader question here. Like the only reason I think people were generally skeptical of Jordan Hicks as a starter was command, right? He didn't have enough command to absolutely maximize his stuff in the bullpen. So I think the skeptics said, well, how could this possibly work? Trying to go 4, 5, 6 innings at a time if he's as inconsistent with the quality of the stuff that he has in short relief. So, Trevor, I want to throw this to you first. Like, why do you think it's working so far for Hicks in this new role?
One interesting thing is I think establishing first is how the word like command is used and like the difference between no control, and command. In my eyes, it's like the when you go along that list, it's the more advanced of pitcher you are. So your target gets smaller, your ability, like your crosshair, your targeting gets more and more precise. And I think that as a reliever, throwing 103, like there's just something violent about your delivery that there's only going to be so much repetition you can do. Even Mason Miller, who's doing it too, he sprays the zone pretty well too. It's not like he's just dialing a half of the plate. He just throws so hard that it doesn't matter. And that's what Hicks kind of played on. The problem was he got to no control to where none of it was in the strike zone. So guys, it moved so much that he couldn't throw it in the box at all. I think as a starter, he has better control. He's throwing 95 instead of 107. And it's moving like crazy. He's always had like stupid movement on his stuff, honestly inexplicable at times, and he's just throwing it in the box more, and that's guys are having to swing because it's going to be a strike and the movement is taking care of it. So like that's kind of what he's doing. He's just kind of gotten into the control realm, I feel like, as opposed to command. But the nice thing is about a starter is the longer you go and the more in the groove you get, the more in the zone you feel, the more often you're confident, you're getting confidence from success. Then that command starts to come where you're like, oh, maybe I'll just try to go away with this breaking ball through lefty. Like maybe I'll try a backdoor guy. I think I can do this. Do it once, you get confidence, and you start to do it all the time. A lot of times it's just the commitment to the pitch as opposed to the physical, especially when he's been around for as long as he's been around. Like he knows how to throw the ball over the plate. It's just what is his brain telling him he's going to do, and it's different as a starter. And sometimes that transition like plays up big time. Seth Lugo's another example of a guy who very easily makes that transition. He goes into that mindset really, really easily, and it looks like Hicks does it pretty well too.
Yeah, I think mindset is an interesting idea. I mean, you're talking about, throwing at your max versus, stepping off that max and thinking about how to get through different innings. So I do think that you need to have a wide enough arsenal to do this. And so Hicks, Lopez, and AJ Puck, who were kind of our three, and Crochet, right? That's another player.
Yeah, Garrett Crochet.
Those are our players that are kind of our guinea pigs this year. All 4 of them, I think, have a wide enough arsenal in terms of enough pitches that they could get lefties out. A lot of times as a reliever, they can hide you against certain handedness. And in this case, each one of these 4 showed, at least, kind of a splitter slider combo. That's Puck and Hicks. For Lopez, it's kind of a slider curve combo. For Crochet, it's the slider cutter with a changeup. All of them showed a wide enough arsenal. But I would say that if you're looking for the future, I do think that there's a level of command that you need to have. And, I have this measure location plus. If you look at these guys last year, all of them at least were able to do above average locations with one of their fastballs or the slider. So Lopez locates his slider well. Hicks actually, even last year when we thought he didn't have much command and he was just this wild, fire-breathing reliever, his fastballs, four-seam fastball was in above average locations, and even his sinker was 98, 99. It wasn't like one of the like a really low Aroldis Chapman has really low location numbers. There's no way that Aroldis Chapman could be a starter.
Mhm.
Even though he has a wide arsenal, he just doesn't have a pitch that he can get in the strike zone when he needs it. These guys all have one of those pitches. And I would actually say that, one of the reasons that it didn't work out for Puck, I think there was a real reduction in his stuff, and there may be some sort of injury component to it. But on top of that, he didn't really have good command of any of his hard pitches. And I think that's something you need going in.
I'm looking at splits too and trying to decide if we can see wide enough splits from a reliever where they have too much of a struggle against lefties or righties. And you say, okay, even though they might have enough pitches, even if they have the command, they have such a major flaw working in that short relief role that they can't overcome it. So my guy that I thought when I started digging around for some guys that could be starters, Adrian Morejón, by some of the criteria.
Oh, that's my guy. That's what I was going to say. He's a great candidate to be a starter.
I thought that too. And then I looked at his career splits, and it's small because he's been hurt a lot. And it's only 50 and 51 and 2/3 innings against righties. So he's faced 238 righties in his career, but they're hitting 317, 370, 541 against him. So I'd be immediately in this position of saying, no, we can't try this until he has a better solution against righties. Because then if you put him into a starting role, he's going to get just destroyed in the current form. There might be ingredients there to keep working on it, but my concern would be the level of struggle against righties. He's fine against lefties. He's great against lefties. He looks like, at the very least, he's a good late inning reliever. But how would you get him from here to there to make it happen, given that he ticks some of the other boxes?
Yeah, I'm excited about him because really interesting fastball, 97, good slider that he throws a lot. And so as a reliever, it works. I guess, as a starter, the theoretical, like the stuff plus on his curveball is good. So I would have him be working on that curveball. The stuff plus on his split finger isn't good, but one of those two pitches would need to be his change of pace pitch, his pitch that he used more against lefties, because, I don't think that slider is necessarily the right thing for him to get righties out with, over and over again. I think he would at least need to have something else to show them.
The other thing I would throw this for Trevor is just, if you wanted to make this happen, you want to try Adrian Morejón as a starter down the road, do you move him into a long relief role first and try to have him troubleshoot it in games without the full move, but to be in a role where he's going to be tested a little bit more often? Is that a logical way to go? Or can he stay in a short relief role for 2 or 3 more years and in his late 20s possibly make that adjustment? Can he learn what he needs to learn, working basically 1 inning at a time against big league hitters, to eventually make that leap down the road?
Probably not, just because some of the things that come along with that, like when you have that role, especially on your team, like your manager's not going to be like, well, I'm gonna, we got to get 3 outs here, but I'm gonna give him a righty to fit. Like he's not going to get the opportunities at all to see if he can, throw any of these pitches that can get them out. He's gonna be like, my job is to get the lefties out, and that is what I have to do. And you're not thinking about expanding that job just in case in your head. It is a commitment thing. But I think if you have it in your mind that you might face a guy twice in an outing, that could change. That could start to shift those things in your head. And especially for him, like if he isn't able to get the ball up and in, for example, to righties, like that's kind of the classic hold, the four seam up and in, especially if you have a little bit of cut, or if you throw a cutter, the Wade Miley just throw cutters up and in, like if you're not able to do that or have a wrinkle like that is an inside pitch because the slider isn't doing it, then he needs to be able to throw that at some point as a wrinkle, like getting guys off the barrel, getting jam shots, getting guys thinking about it up there. You're just not going to do that as a one in guy, especially when you throw that hard. Like he's going to be given opportunities to throw and leverage just because he's got that swing and miss stuff. So like they're just not. You either got to be like, hey, you're going to have to get 6 outs or more every time, or let's commit you to being like a guy who throws 98 from the left side and go punch a couple ticks. It's later in the game. I think those are the 2 options. You got to pick one. It's kind of hard. If you're in the middle, they might never ever do either one well. And I think that might be a little bit what's happening to him, like timing wise too. He's hurt a lot. So I hope that he can find, somewhere lean one way of the fence. But I think if you're sitting on that fence, it's going to make it harder and harder to make him a starter later.
One other type of role change that we're seeing right now is the starter, reliever, starter. We talked about it with Ronaldo Lopez as one example. A current one that we didn't really expect to see it from necessarily was Bryse Willson in Milwaukee. He made 20 starts 2 years ago for the Pirates, so it wasn't that long ago that he was a starter. What I'm surprised by watching him this season is his strikeout rate is actually at a career high as he's kind of changed roles again. And I think I threw this out there a week or two ago. Like, I have this belief that being a long reliever gives you a better chance to come back into the rotation because you have to do, we were just talking about Morejón, where you have to face everybody. Even if you're not in leverage, you're still problem solving. You're still trying to keep your team in a game. You're trying to make sure a game doesn't get close. Those things matter. It's still facing big league hitters. So what has been the key for like Bryse Willson to get to this new level? Is this the Brewers doing some Rays stuff, like another Zach Littell type, kind of an unheralded guy that had the stuff all along and just needed to be in the right organization or have the right people working with him to unlock everything?
Maybe his stuff goes a little bit of an uptick, and probably has a little more information. Probably he gets a little bit of an uptick in stuff being in the bullpen, but he seems like a guy who hasn't given up on the dream of being a starter. Like we had Trevor Williams in 2022. This is very similar. Like he's like, I want to be a starter. I'm going to be a free agent soon. I want to be a starter. He made 8 starts, but they were all spot starts. And then he threw a bunch out of the pen, but he treated it like a starting role, and that seems to be a little bit like Bryse Willson is like got to keep the team in, but I also might need to go a little bit longer than even most long guys do, and so it seems like that's something he's keeping in the back. And what is he, like 24 or 25? He's really young. He's way younger than a lot of people know. I remember being blown away when he first came up at like 21. I was like, this kid's 21. What? Because he didn't throw 100. He was kind of a crafty guy a little bit. So I think that's a little bit to do with it. To be honest, I haven't seen a lot of him pitch this year. I haven't caught it live, but that's usually what's going on. He's probably holding on to that idea that I can still be a starter and keeping the arsenal kind of fresh. And there is a way to do that job, I feel like, with that mindset.
Yeah, and with Bryse Willson in particular, in terms of his group of pitches, is I don't think that any of his pitches, even if you added 2 or 3 ticks, like, I mean, he's like 93.9. If he was sitting 97 out of the pen, then maybe his fastballs would be slightly above average. Like they're not great shapes. They're not great fastballs. He'd really have to push the velo really hard to be a good reliever. But as a starter, what he does is he throws 3 fastballs. And, not only does that mess with your ability as a hitter to sort of keyhole any one type of hard pitch. You can't be like, oh, if it's hard, then it's going to be the 4-seamer and it's going to be high. It could be a high cutter. He could even throw a high 2-seamer. So, and those are going to have really different movement patterns. So he's playing his fastballs all off each other in a way that wouldn't really work that well, I think, out of the pen. And none of those fastballs would be plus out of the pen.
Like Lance Lynn.
Yeah,
he couldn't be a reliever.
Exactly. Yeah, he's kind of, if there is video I would give him, it would probably be Lance Lynn, because he's only got 1 secondary that's any good. It's a pretty good curveball, 81 miles an hour, and the cutter's at 88, 89. So he does have a band there from 89 to 93, 94, and he's just trying to take the hard ones and play them off each other in a way that makes it really hard for hitters. And I think it's something that can work. I don't think, like Lynn had like a better career than I would expect out of Miller going forward. But the way that Lynn is now is something that Willson can do, I think.
It's interesting too, because I think there's a perception for a lot of folks that a failed starter will always be a good reliever. That even if Lance Lynn doesn't have enough stuff to be a starter anymore, he can definitely be a good reliever. But there are guys that sort of fall in between.
We've seen that's not always the case. I mean, definitely in season, I think that it's, you don't just get the extra 2 miles an hour and they're a great reliever,
Yeah.
But we're seeing with Luke Weaver a little bit that, like, if you give them the off season and if they come in training for shorter stints, that you can see a pretty big velo bump.
Yeah, what have you seen from Weaver so far this season, Trevor? You mentioned him in one of our meetings that he looks like a completely different guy now than he has really at any point during his time in the big leagues.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of some other like transitions I've seen. A guy who, like, he's got 9 years, like he's been around for a while, and he's had, I think, stints where as a starter, like, this guy's got really, I think it was universally known that his stuff was really good. Like, he's got, there's tools here, and why isn't it getting put together? And when it starts to get put together, there was be an injury or something, and then he missed a bunch of time in a row, like 2 years. So it's like, what maybe this is profiling more as a reliever, but he could run it up to 96, 97 as a starter. So it's there. So you see all this stuff. I know the Mets kind of messed around this, like Tyler McGill. Like, is this something, like, if he goes out and throws 99 only for an inning, can he stay healthy that way too? So this is something that's always in someone's mind. One thing that has stood out to me is he's always had a good changeup, and now it's a power changeup. He's got a seam shifted. I don't know if he knows that it's that type of thing, but he's a supinator, like similar. He's a lot of what he does is similar to what I was doing, and the way he would pitch will be similar, except for his slider's a little bit smaller and more of a cutter. But he's got a really good power changeup, and I saw it the other day against the Orioles. So he's thrown 97, 98, and he's a guy who would like sit like 94, 95 on good days as a really starter, and like 93, 94 normally, which is a pretty hard throwing starter. And him adding 5 miles an hour is not surprising at all. He's still kind of throwing in the long roll, so here's something to pay attention with him. I would not, the more success he has, like, he's got a 0.7 whip, right? No one's getting on base, so that's a big deal, especially late in games. So if a spot opens up for a 7th inning, or they need an 8th inning guy, he might get those opportunities more and more as the season goes on, because he profiles as a guy with that type of like swing and miss stuff. Now, if he could just throw a breaking ball a little bit more consistently, I think they're non-competitive a little bit more, or maybe learn a sweeper or something that can get more consistent swings and misses, then his strikeout rate will increase. He's at 9 per 9. It's not like he's not striking anybody out, but fastball changeup just isn't the way. So, but you see the velo, you see that his changeup's turned from like a heavy fade thing to a really hard changeup that still has 15 plus arm side movement, which you're looking for to tunnel with your fastball, and then you're throwing 98. At that point, it doesn't really matter, about carry. He's got a little bit of carry. He's not ton. I think he's slightly above average, and it plays up. But like, these are things that he was trying to throw a 2-seam, trying to throw stuff as a starter. Now he doesn't have to worry about that, and that's kind of what happens.
He had some similarities to like a Waka, where he was like a 4-seam change guy that was always looking for a decent breaking ball.
Yeah.
And I've talked to him plenty of times over the years about like finding that decent breaking ball. And what's interesting about this year's version is that the breaking balls haven't changed at all in movement profiles, but they've gotten better because he changed his fastball.
Yeah.
And it's not normally the story. I think the fastball is got to be the hardest thing to change. It's the thing you've thrown the most. But he added 2 inches of ride to that fastball this year. And the velo, and also cut some of the horizontal movement. So he really, made it a truer 4-seam. And what that does is it emphasizes the horizontal movement on the changeup and the cutter and the curve. I absolutely think he could be a starter, and it might be one of his best years as a starter, because he's done the starting thing in the past. And this fastball is making his breaking balls play out better. And he always has that changeup. The changeup is like, the best thing going for him. What he's doing now is, because he's such a drop and drive guy and he's getting the best ride of his career, Stuff Plus loves his fastball. It's kind of like Imanaga in a way, just from the right, in that he's getting low and then throwing a pitch that stays true. And given that the arsenal is fairly wide and the command is pretty good, I think Weaver could go in either direction, really.
Is it fair to bring up Kevin Gossman and his kind of winding road to becoming the starter he is now? I mean, he spent time in the bullpen in 2019. I think people sort of forget that the year he split between Atlanta and Cincinnati, the time he spent in Cincinnati was almost entirely as a reliever. I think he only made one start for the Reds, comes back the next year, the shortened year with the Giants, kind of goes back to being, or turns back into this guy that he's been for the last 5 seasons now. Is that possible for Luke Weaver?
Yeah. I mean, he's bounced enough. It's one of those things like, where's the opportunity at? And once you're not with the organization you were with, so like Gossman was like, it was kind of a, you know, in the words of my father, this is his favorite saying, crap or get out the pot situation.
He likes the PG version.
Yeah, you either gotta like be the guy or figure it out, or just take whatever opportunity you have and just do that as best you can. And it seems like he's just like, I'm gonna make the best of this situation. It's nice to know, because there's probably uncertainty, like, am I a starter? Am I constantly working, fighting for a 5th spot, and am I healthy? That's just what's been in his mind for years, probably. And so now that he is, you know, the Yankees might give him a chance to start because he's proving it with them, or like the Rays, or like a team like, so that opportunity might present itself because of what he's doing as a reliever. And I think the same thing happened with Gossman. They're like, he has the pedigree and he has done it in the past. All we need to do is look for some change to show us that he might happen again. Someone took a flyer on him. He threw really well. And here we are. And then he's been very good ever since. He figured something out on and there might have been a health component. Maybe he was dealing with something a little naggy and went, you know, in the offseason. Remember when Verlander had the hip thing?
Man, he had that bad year.
Yeah, and they're like, well, Verlander's, he's been around for a while. It's probably towards the end, and he went and got it fixed, figured it out on his own, and then came back and he's back to his old self. Sometimes that stuff happens too. I think there's a little bit of that with Gossman. And it could be the same with Weaver, because he's around and people are like, he has 9 years. That's not nothing. Like,
yeah, but one thing that also stands out to me is that so I've talked to him a lot about, you know, he's like, he'll like get the Rapsodo and then he'll talk to the Rapsodo people and get like targets and things he should do for his pitches from the Rapsodo people. And I was like, there's a failure here. Why isn't your team? And so part of it was he's bouncing around. So if you're in between 2 teams, you don't have a team to go to and be like, what should I do? You know? And then part of it also, and I hate to just kind of throw anybody under the bus, but like, he wasn't with good teams that are good at doing this. He was with St. Louis when he first came up. We know that. I've had people tell me they don't even think the machines were plugged in those years, you know? And then he goes to Arizona, they are trying to change things around, but you know, this is pre who's there now? Strom. It's pre-Strom, you know, Arizona, and that's when I'm talking to him, and he's getting the Rapsodo and doing stuff on his own. Then he goes to the Royals, and then the year when he finally goes to some places where people might have, you know, been able to do stuff, Cincinnati, Seattle, and New York. That's 2023. He's bouncing around so much in the season. He's getting 13 innings with Seattle. Like, how much can you get done with a pitcher when he's just arrived in the middle of the season and you're trying to win games, and Luke's like, what should I do? And you're like, I don't know. Try to, you know, like, what?
Yeah, they
like,
tried. You could
tried.
tell. They started against us. He started against us, and you could tell he was trying to do Mariners ball. He was trying to do, but he just wasn't. He's like, I'm not. I got to practice a little bit. Like,
right, practice a little bit. So what happens? He ends up on the Yankees, who are pretty good at this sort of stuff, and it doesn't happen right away. It happens when they say, go home this offseason and please do A, B, C, and D. These 3 things, these 4 things. He does those things. He comes back and he's good. I mean, that's it. It's partly coaching. It's partly coaching and lining that coaching up with the right timing and the right opportunity. I mean, he had 13 innings with Seattle last year. They were pretty good coaches. He had some time with Cincinnati. They had pretty good coaches. They had pretty good coaches in New York. It took the offseason. And that's what I was sort of saying about sometimes relievers transitioning to starters transitioning to being relievers. If it's in the middle of the season, they can't do the things that would make them a great reliever right away. It's kind of hard to do
unless
that.
the team sucks, frankly.
Right. Or they can send them down. If you have options, then you can,
like the Mariners were like a game back the whole time. They're like, we need a fifth starter to go deeper.
We just need an arm. Like we need
an arm that's more consistent.
We can't spend a bunch of time trying to change your pitches in the middle of this. We just need you to go out there and give us like 3 or 4 innings of decent ball,
Yeah. I'm looking. I mean, the results, the worst year was really for Luke Weaver was 2020. 6.58 ERA, but 2020 was 2020. Like we don't count that for most people. It's just it happened, but it doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things.
And then 2022 and 2023 were bad, but like
it was all over the place, and the skills were there. The skills were intact. Like you could look and see glimmers of hope. So this was actually a pretty sharp lottery ticket sort of signing for the Yankees. And I would imagine if he pitches well all year, I mean, we're going to see some other team put a more significant investment into Luke Weaver for 2025. This is a league star for pitching, and that's why I think we are going to see more creativity in where starting pitchers come from. And we see it sometimes now in the draft. We'll see relievers get drafted and be converted into starters. A lot of organizations
Christian
have
Scott
sent for that. Yeah. Will Warren, I think, was one. Coming to the Yankee system right now. Ryan Nelson was a closer at Oregon.
And I would look for stuff that is good enough that if you could subtract 5 to 10 points of stuff plus, they'd still be 95 plus stuff plus. Like you saw that with Reynaldo Lopez. Like he had great stuff plus numbers. They are much worse now, but at 95-ish, you can survive if you have a large arsenal and command of one of your hard pitches. So that's my rubric. Large arsenal, stuff that can survive a downgrade, and command of one of your hard pitches.
Yeah, I think a lot of that does explain Jordan Hicks too. Like just crazy good stuff across the board. It's easy to see it in the model. It was a really good way to visualize it when the Giants made that signing in the offseason. On to our big challenge of the week. How would you game plan against Jared Jones if you were instructing the Cubs hitters? If you were trying to come up with a game plan for tonight's matchup, using the hitters in that lineup against the guy that's been just phenomenal so far this year, striking out more than a third of the batters he's facing. It's not walking guys right now either. There's just so little give in Jared Jones. Maybe you'll get lucky, hit a homer, a little bit of a home run problem, but that's picking nits in what has been a fantastic start to the season.
Well, that's what I'm going for, though.
You're just trying to beat him with the long ball, but what's the weakness right now? What are you trying to do?
The only weakness is that he has 2 pitches. That's the only weakness. So you are, if I'm him, I'm keyholing one of those 2 pitches. He throws the high 4-seam and the low slider. That's the game plan. And unfortunately, I looked at comparisons of comparative 96 plus with great ride 4-seamers high in the zone, and I looked at Cubs hitters over the last 2 years. So Ian Happ and Nico Horner sit 4-seam fastball high in the zone, use your flat-ish swings to stay on top of that ball and try to do something. Everybody else is hitting zeros against those types of fastballs. Cody Bellinger has seen 25 of this type of fastball, and his slash line is 0-0-0-0-0-0-0-0-0. Christopher Morel, zeros. Mike Tauchman, zeros. Patrick Wisdom, zeros. Matt Mervis, zeros. Bush has had a little bit of success. Those 3 guys, Bush, Horner, and Happ, can sit 4-seam. The other guys, and I don't know, I'd like to hear from Trevor if this is at all viable. The other guys, I think should sit slider. So Swanson slugs 700 on sliders like Jones in the bottom of the zone. And Christopher Morel slugs 1,000. And Cody Bellinger slugs 571. So do you think that's viable, Trevor? Sit the slider?
That might be viable. So here's how I think about it. Here's how I approach things like this. I would say I want to know what Jared Jones does most. So like there's an archetype thing going on. I won't go way into that, but like there are guys that do certain things. He's right-handed, he's slider, four-seam fastball ride guy. So that tells me he's a tunnel guy. He's not like an Eflin who is crisscrossing, not like a Bassett who's crisscrossing all the stuff across the same tunnels. It's the other way. He's throwing out of the same spot. I mean, we saw that with the Terang.
He's trying to make you think it's always fastball, and then when the fastball goes up and the slider goes down.
The Bryse Terang at bat, that overlay is exactly where he wants to throw the pitches every single time, except sometimes the sliders are over the plate for strikes. That's it. But just closer over. So he works glove side. He throws four seams up and into lefties and up and away to righties most often. Sometimes it leaks middle, which is something to pay attention to, but that's where he's going. He's using that glove side tunnel is what I call it. And then he throws a slider off the same thing and it's going to be in the zone, and then he moves a little out of zone. That's what he does. He throws a changeup every once in a while. It's not great. And you flip over a curveball first pitch every once in a while to a lefty.
And the reason you do glove side tunnel is that against lefties, your breaking ball hits their back foot instead of
it's a low risk, high reward situation to both righties and lefties.
Yeah, it kind of works for both.
He's never going to get hurt there unless it leaks over the plate. So he's getting around it a little bit more where the strengths of the other guys come. So I'm like, hey, here's what we know. He's going to go up and in to Bellinger and Happ, and he's going to go down and in to back foot with the slider, depending on the count. So then I'm like, okay, when does he do these things?
Right.
So there were some interesting things. I have a report that I had that tells me what pitches he throws in every single count percentage wise, which now he's faced enough guys. We're a month in to where you can get a kind of idea of what he's thinking about when he gets in certain counts to certain guys. And he's young. He's a rookie. So like, I would be like, he's a rookie. So like these patterns are probably based on what he's thinking, not just based on what's happening in the moment. If it were an older guy, I would think maybe he
hasn't figured out necessarily, like he hasn't seen these guys enough to be like,
exactly. He's probably doesn't know these things at least as clearly as I would. So for example, to a righty, he's 3-2. He's thrown 70% fastballs, 2 changeups and 1 slider, which is weird. I'm like, you've thrown 2 changeups, 3-2 to righties. So I'm looking for something straight.
That's like a sinker-ish, like he's trying to throw it.
Maybe he's using it like that, or maybe he's just like, they think a fastball is coming because I throw so many, so I'm going to get him with the changeup, which is something that I would also go with him there. I would look for something straight 3-2 if I'm a right-handed hitter, and 2-2, 63% of the 2-2 pitches thrown to righties are fastballs, but it flips 1-2. 1-2, it's 66% sliders.
So it's kind of conventional. Like once he gets to 2 strikes, he wants to throw the slider. You know, when he needs to strike, he kind of throws the four seam. Yeah,
he knows the slider's the best pitch. But when it gets 2-2, and that's even now, it's fastball time again. Something I've thought a lot. And so those are things. If you're Nico Horner, you can count on because he's a guy who jumps pitches anyway. So this is very much how he approaches it. So then I'm going to use Nico again as an example. What does Nico hit well? He probably knows this stuff too. Close to him. He hits it close to him really well. Fastballs that leak up and into righties. He hits that better than most righties do.
Turns on it real quick.
So now there's a tunnel. There's 2 tunnels, 1 glove side, 1 arm side. He tries to throw glove side all the time, but if he throws arm side, that's playing into Nico's strengths because he hits sliders down middle, not down and away, down middle. So if he sees a tunnel of a pitch coming up towards him, that's when he should get excited to hit because he's either going to hit the fastball or he's going to get a slider that stays more over the plate. He can hit it. Both pitches he can hit. Natural.
Anything that looks like it's closer to him.
But if it looks like it's away from him, I would say either try to spoil it because he's Nico Horner and he covers that box really well.
You could maybe spray it to the opposite field. Or
you might, and he's okay just flipping it over. If he's like, okay, well, he's not going to miss. He hasn't missed today. So I'm going to see if I can keep fouling off to get that miss, or I'm going to see if I can just poke it. And that's the best I can do. And Bellinger hits the up and in. Now, not guys who throw this hard, but he does have he can cheat and get a fastball up and in, not away.
And he's seen this approach against him so often that
he's going to get the same tunnel. He's going to get the up and in and the slider down and away, and he can hit both of those pitches. He just has to be right. So that's what he's trying to do.
I think, if I'm advised, I'm like, Bellinger, just guess the F out of today. Just
take a shot early in the count, and then spoil and try to get a mistake late.
Because he's gonna have to cheat a little bit and guess and be another word for guess that's not so offensive to some hitters is be like a sort of attentive. Predict. Sort of anticipate.
Yeah.
So anticipate an up and in 4-seam, and then and kind of get through fast and get those hands in. Have like a
and then just trust. that you can drag the bat through the zone and at least fell off a nasty slider or get a barrel on it and just let your swing get there.
Slider that's low but not out of the zone, a low and in the zone slider is actually Bellinger's wheelhouse. That's
exactly
that's his best swing. So yeah, I think Bellinger, and then just going off of past results, I think Happ, I don't know why, seems to have a swing that works for both of these. Maybe Happ has seen this approach a lot and has built a swing that can handle this. But I think today the biggest hurdles for Jared Jones will be actually Happ and Horner. That's going to be my call.
Yeah,
but Bellinger could touch him for a solo homer, or if he's lucky, there's somebody on.
Yeah, one last interesting thing too from a lefty, from just Bellinger and Happ. 2-0, he's 6 out of 8 of his 2-0 pitches have been sliders to lefties, and 3 of the 5 3-1 have been sliders. So there's something about fastball.
So tell that to Bellinger. That's a great time to guess slider, because you can miss it and you're still in the count.
He's thinking you are sitting dead red heater. That is what he's thinking. That's why he only throws sliders. Blake Snell had this after in 2018, he wins the Cy Young. 19 2-0 changeups to righties. He just could not stop throwing them. It was like 100% rate. We were in June, so it was like 100%.
That's
like,
crazy.
Or it was like 96%.
I mean, you're happy to guess on something when you start seeing 60s. I think.
And CJ Cron's a big no. If I see a 90%er, I'm sitting on that pitch. He sat on a 2-0 changeup and took him way back for a 3-run homer. And then he told me after the game, he's like, "Told you." I was like, it's rare. You don't get stuff that's clear. But if you can find one, just be like, I remember that 2-0, he throws 80% slider. I'm just gonna guess. Because why not?
Yeah, I think over 60 you can start it, but if it's over 80, like then
if you're in the 70s, 80s,
that's like written in red on your card. You're like, remember that.
So pay attention to the 2-0 3-1 from him to lefties if he gets behind, but he hasn't been behind a ton. That's the thing. Yeah. So you got to. They need to get spoil some. They need to spoil some of his good pitches. So
Belly is like sort of anticipate up and in fastball early.
Yes, that's happening early. He's going to establish that right away.
2-0. If it's too far up, like take. If you get to 2-0, then take a swing on a slider low. I think for Happ, it's look for the high fastball, because it seems like he can do something with that. And then for Horner, I like that idea of anything that's moving towards the body.
Yeah, look for this tunnel as opposed to that tunnel. That's what I would tell him.
I like it.
Well, we got a plan for 3 hitters. I think the rest are just screwed.
Good luck, man.
Everybody else figure it out for yourselves.
Yeah, Morel actually looks like he can hit the low slider, so I might actually tell him just look for low slider.
Yeah,
like look for a slider in the zone if you want to say something. Look for a slider.
If you guys can spoil high heaters, like just foul them off. Like Jones will be like, what the hell? Like he will. It's like just a few.
Producer Brian asked if I'm calling for a no hitter, and I think I'm going to leave that for somebody else this time.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
For what it's worth, at least with a 2-pitch guy, like these numbers that Trevor's spitting out, like it's easier to find an 80% or 90% if they're only a 2-pitch guy for the most part.
If you throw a changeup in there, now I don't know, guys.
This is why we called for Strider to throw that 3rd pitch, and this is why I think eventually Jones, the Stuff Plus loves his change. So like if he can command that pitch, if he's going to be an ace, every year, then it's going to be because he starts, folding in that changeup and throwing the changeup in counts you don't expect, and playing with the anticipation of hitters. It's very rare to be a two-pitch pitcher for very long periods of time for success.
Yeah, all the other part of the game plan, just follow them off. Just stay alive. I mean, they can work really hard.
It's literally we're to that point where guys are like, if I can just foul one extra pitch off, that's huge.
Yeah,
because he's like one more chance like that. That is literally what they're like. Let's make him throw one more pitch. That's a win.
Get him out.
Also, he might not have a ton of pitches,
6 or 7.
Yeah,
they're not going to. Yeah,
same thing with Jinx. When he starts throwing, I'm out there just like trying to make him throw longer bats.
We want to see somebody else. We want to see Luis Ortiz or somebody else.
You guys want to make a prediction for the Paul Skeens debut? We didn't do that yesterday. Innings?
I'm gonna say he gets to 5. They've been really trying to stretch him out, and I think he's gonna dominate. So I'm gonna go 5. Makes one mistake, so like maybe a solo homer. Like 6 strikeouts, 2 walks, solo homer, 1 run, 5 innings.
Only a solo homer. That's really good. Trevor?
Man, I'll throw a 4 hits total too.
Okay.
But that's literally exactly what I was going to say. Like
Yeah.
to a T, everything you said was I agree with.
Some
100%.
mistake somewhere. Somebody gets him on something.
Couple mistakes, yeah, like a couple 6-hole ground balls on fastballs run over. Who's he starting against again?
Cubs too.
Cubs. Oh yeah, duh.
They're going to Jones.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call. That maybe someone gets him for a solo shot for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 6-7 strikeouts in 5 innings seems very reasonable, though, based on what he's had so far. Jimmy Spencer disappointed that we're not trying to call a no-hitter for Paul Skeens' debut, but we would never do that to someone making their debut.
Saturday's going to be great. Steele versus Skeens. This is a great series for this point of the season, this point of the year. I think this is fun. And for the Pirates, like they started so hot, and this is what was kind of missing last year. Last year they just fell apart. This year they can say, well, now we got Skeens. They're calling up Nick Gonzalez, who has seemingly changed some stuff, and they still have O'Neal Cruz and O'Neal Cruz, by my numbers, has seen some of the best pitching in the big leagues this year. And the difference between O'Neal Cruz and Elly De La Cruz in terms of the quality of pitching that they've seen by Pitching Plus is actually one of the biggest differences in baseball. Elly, for some reason, has seen poor pitching, and O'Neal has seen some of the best pitching in the big leagues.
Weird for two guys playing the same division, but schedules can be pretty erratic for the first 6 or so weeks of the season.
And we're not as divisional heavy as we used to be.
Yeah. No, that's true. Should be a great weekend of baseball. A friendly reminder being that it's the Friday of Mother's Day weekend. If you have not picked up gifts, cards,
go get something quick.
Maybe get on that. If you got to take care of that, take care of that. But lots of ground to cover this weekend. Looking forward to watching that debut and watching this whole series. I think you're right. I think Pirates Cubs will be a good one throughout the entire weekend. You can give us a follow on Twitter. You can find Trevor at I am Trevor May. Find Eno at Saris. Find me at Derek Van Riper. You can follow the pod at Rates and Barrels. As I mentioned up top, the link to join our Discord is in the show description. If you got future questions, you can also email them to us, ratesandbarrels@gmail.com. Big email mailbag coming very soon. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to smash the like button on this video. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, do it. 1 o'clock Eastern, live every Friday. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.